So we're reading in Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother, and we've reached Canto 3, the House of the Spirit and the New Creation. And in what we read last week, Aswapati experiences, it's the beginning of the description of the house of the spirit, the dwelling place or realm or kingdom of spirit. And we read that there only reigns the spirit's motionless power, poised in itself through still eternity, and its omniscient and omnipotent peace. And there's no clash or conflict or friction of any kind, and no suffering. There's only the law of eternity, the law of eternal spirit, forever fixed upon truth's giant base in her magnificent and termless home. So I'm going to read on from there to the end of the section. Bottom of page 321. There, nature on her dumb spiritual couch, immutably transcendent, knows her source, and to the stir of multitudinous worlds assents unmoved in a perpetual calm. All causing, all sustaining and aloof, the witness looks from his unshaken poise, an eye immense regarding all things done. Apart, at peace, above creation's stir, immersed in the eternal altitudes, he abode defended in his shoreless self, companioned only by the all-seeing One. A mind too mighty to be bound by thought, a life too boundless for the play in space, a soul without borders, unconvinced of time. He felt the extinction of the world's long pain. He became the unborn self that never dies. He joined the sessions of infinity. On the cosmic murmur, primal loneliness fell. Annulled was the contact formed with time-born things. Empty grew nature's wide community. All things were brought back to their formless seed. The world was silent for a cyclic hour. Although the afflicted nature he had left maintained beneath him her broad, numberless fields, her enormous act receding, failed, remote, as if a soulless dream at last had ceased. No voice came down from the high silences. None answered from her desolate solitude. A stillness of cessation reigned. The wide, immortal hush before the gods are born. A universal force awaited, mute, the veiled transcendence' ultimate decree. I think last week we started on this side. So, Nargis, would you begin, please?
The nature of the dumb spiritual couch, immutably transcendent, knows her source. Into the stir of multitudinous worlds, ascends unmoved in a personal, on a perpetual calm.
Thank you. So this is perhaps the highest state of nature, of this force, this creative force that moves and gives birth to all the worlds. But here she's on her resting place, her couch. It's where you lie down and rest. No? And this is a spiritual couch. This is her spiritual resting place. And it is dumb, silent. There's no expression going out. This is the level where she is transcendent, above the creation, above all limits and boundaries, and immutable, immutably transcendent. She is unchanging. She knows her source. Where has she come from? She has come from that transcendent silence. She's aware of that. She knows it fully. She's silent. She's at rest. And at the same time, she is saying yes. She is giving her assent. She says yes to the stir of multitudinous worlds. She's given birth to all these many, many universes and their levels and their beings. And it's all in movement. It's stirring, it's moving. She just says, yes, let it be. She is unmoved. She isn't attached to these worlds. She is not moving. She's not moved. She's in a state of perpetual calm, undisturbed, everlasting calm. Perhaps this may be the highest level of nature. And Sri Aurobindo often presents us these two sides of nature and soul, Prakriti and Purusha, the active, creative, dynamic force, and the witness who gives the command but who is not active. So that is what he evokes in the next sentence, please, Renana.
All causing, all sustaining, and aloof. The witness looks from his
Unshaken
voice, an eye immense, regarding all things done.
Yes. So there is nature at rest, and there is the witness consciousness, which causes everything, which sets everything in motion, which supports everything, sustaining, supporting, but aloof, detached, distant. The witness, the consciousness that observes. There he is, he's looking at all this stir of multitudinous worlds from his unshaken poise. Whatever happens, if one of those worlds just blows up in a great explosion or collapses into nothingness, whatever happens, he is unshaken. He doesn't move, he's not disturbed. He is there like an eye, a huge eye, watching everything that is done, everything that's done in all those multitudinous worlds. So this is the poise of the two in one on this level. And then Sri Aurobindo returns to Aswapati. The next sentence is a description about Aswapati's experience. Bhavan, you would read.
A heart at peace, above creation's stir, immersed in the eternal altitudes. He abode defended in his shoreless self, companioned only as all-seeing one.
Yes. So Aswapati himself also feels apart. He's at peace. He's at a level above all that movement of creation. And he's immersed, he's absorbed by, soaked up by these eternal altitudes, the high levels. Altitude, you know, in an aeroplane, the pilot tells you the altitude that he's flying at, the height. He, Aswapati, abode, he remained, he dwelt, defended. Defended, of course, means that you are protected. Something's defending you. But it also means that things are not allowed to come to you. There's that French sense of défendre, that there's a prohibition. Yeah? Nothing can come to him. He's defended and protected in that sense. Because he's in his shoreless self, his own vast, unlimited, true self, highest self. And his only companion is the oneness, companioned only by that all-seeing one, the one consciousness which is seeing everything.
Immersed means to go deep into.
It means actually to be soaked in. So it's the idea that there's a big bath, no? And if you want to dye your cloth, you will immerse it and let it soak there for a long time. But of course we also use it in a psychological sense, that you're reading a very, very fascinating story, you're immersed in your book, you're not paying attention to anything that's going on round about.
But here he says altitude.
So these are heights. He's completely absorbed in these heights. He's not concentrating on anything else. Patricia.
A mind too mighty to be bound by thought. A life too boundless for the play in space. A soul without borders, unconvinced of time. He felt the extinction of the world's long pain. He became the unborn self that never dies. He joined the sessions of infinity.
So again, this is a description of King Asvapati. He's become a mind that is too powerful and large and wide to be bound, to be limited by thought. That mind has access to many other possibilities, not only the possibility of thought. And his life also is now boundless. It has become so wide and vast, too boundless for the play in space. It's not limited by what is happening in the whole universe. And his soul is also without borders. So it is not at all convinced by this play of time, where things get unrolled out in succession and are spread out in space and separated into individuality. He's aware of the oneness of everything. So he feels, he experiences that the long pain of being limited and separated in the world is extinct. It comes to an end. He experiences that, the ending, the extinction of the world's long pain. And he became the unborn self that never dies. We read above that he was living in his shoreless self, and he was companioned by the One. But now he becomes that unborn self. He becomes the One. He unites with it. He merges into it. He joined the sessions of infinity. Aurobindo uses this word sessions at several important places in the poem. One day perhaps I will have time to do a little bit of research about that. The idea of a session is that you sit. A judge sits at the sessions. There are the times when he sits to give judgment, or the king will have a sessions when he can hear all the cases and decide all the matters. But it's the idea of having a place that is your right. You are there, and there's something stable about it. So he joined the sessions of infinity, that station, that state of infinity. He is allowed to become part of that, to participate in it. Will you read, Laura?
On the cosmic normal, primal loveliness
not formed with time-born things. Empty raw nature's white world.
You can read the next two lines as well.
All things were brought back to their formless seat. The world was silent for a cyclic hour.
Yes. So here he speaks about the cosmic murmur. I've been told that there is a sound, that the universe makes a sound, and that if you get into a certain special state, you can hear that sound. The murmur, the sound of the cosmos. A murmur, of course, is quite a faint sound. He's hearing it at a distance. And on that cosmic murmur, now some primal, original state of loneliness falls on that cosmic murmur. Maybe it's still going on, but he doesn't have any contact with it. Annulled was the contact formed with time-born things. That connection that he has with the universe, with all that's going on in it, is annulled, wiped out, abolished. So for him, this whole wide community of nature, it's as if it becomes empty, nothing there, because everything is withdrawn back, brought back to the seed, the formless seed from which everything has emerged. The world was silent for a cyclic hour. I'm thinking about this phrase, the cyclic hour. Yes. So it's a space of time, it's an hour. Perhaps there's a kind of cycle of creation and no creation, a time when the creation is withdrawn. In the tradition, they speak about the night and the day of Brahma, the creator. It's an immensely long period of time. During the day, when he's awake, the universe, the creation goes on. But there's a time when he sleeps, a cyclic hour perhaps, when everything is drawn back into the formless seed. And there's no such thing as a world. In this case, of course, it is Asvapati who's experiencing this cyclic hour, this moment which seems to reflect the withdrawal of creation. I don't think that it means that the whole universe stopped running. For other people it was still running. But for him the experience is that everything has stopped. James.
Although the afflicted nature he had left maintained beneath him her broad, numberless fields, her enormous act receding, pale, remote, as if a soulless dream at last had ceased.
So this is where Aurobindo tells us, no, that this cyclic hour was for Asvapati. Everything else is still going on. This afflicted nature, the suffering, distorted nature which he's left behind, still maintained somewhere down below him. It's all going on, these broad, numberless fields, the many worlds. But all that enormous action seems to get further and further away, receding, failed. He's not aware of it anymore. It becomes so far away. No? And the feeling is as if, oh, at last, that dream has ceased, has stopped. That dream that didn't seem to have any deep significance. It seems to be something soulless, without a deeper meaning, without a deeper purpose. Alex.
No voice came down from the high silences. None answered from her desolate solitudes. A stillness of cessation reigned, the wide, immortal hush before the gods are born. A universal force awaited, mute, the veiled transcendence ultimate decree.
So nothing, there's no voice, there's no message from these high silences, these transcendences. And because nothing comes down, then nothing comes up from those desolate solitudes. There's no response from that afflicted nature far, far away below him. What is reigning, ruling, the state which is there, is a stillness, no movement, no sound, a stillness of cessation. Something has stopped. The whole universe has stopped. And what he experiences is the wide, immortal hush before the gods are born. You notice that it says are, because there isn't a moment when the gods are born or were born. This immortal hush is a state, a transcendent state out of which the gods are born. So there's that silence, and then a universal force, this universal force, the universal mother, the nature, is silent, waiting. She's waiting to know what the transcendent will say. It's from there that the command comes, the decree, the word of command. What is going to happen now? Everything's silent, waiting. The transcendent is veiled. Moments like this come from time to time in the poem. There's a moment with Savitri too, where she's in a sort of state like this of silence and emptiness, as if she could just cease to exist. And she's waiting. Is the transcendent going to tell her to cease to exist, or is something else going to happen? So it's a pause. Would you like to read, Ma'am? Yes?
Then suddenly there came a downward look, as if a sea exploring its own depths, a living oneness widened at its core and joined him to unnumbered multitudes.
Suddenly something happens. From that veiled transcendent, not a word, but a look. Suddenly comes a downward look. And he says that downward look is something like a sea, something limitless, vast, exploring, looking what is in its own depths, deep inside itself. A living oneness. widened at its core. The core is the very center, the heart of the oneness. Now it's widening out, and it joins King Asvapati to unnumbered multitudes. So there's not anymore this sense of primal loneliness. No? There's a look, an opening, and suddenly he's connected to everything. Jenny, you don't want to read? No. Okay, Eve can read.
The bliss, the light, the power, a flying white love, gold, and pure, the soul immense embrace. Existence found its truth on oneness breast, and each became the self and space of all.
Yes. So this is a supreme experience, this living oneness, widening at its core, embracing everything. There's a bliss, the Ananda. There's a light of consciousness. There's power. And above all, there's an absolutely pure, intense love which embraces everything and says, all of it, you, all of this, it is mine. You are all part of me.
The flame is white.
Yes.
We think it could be red, but
White is the color of absolute purity and also of intensity. I'm not sure how it is, but I think if you heat metal in a furnace, it starts out red and then it becomes yellow and finally it becomes white hot. That's the hottest, yes, most intense. Yeah. So it's caught everything into a soul immense embrace. So all this existence, everything that exists, finds its truth on oneness breast, being reunited, reconnected with the one. Everything becomes meaningful. Everything finds its justification and confirmation. And each individual formation became the self, the true innermost self, and the space of all the others. It's something so difficult for us to imagine. And Aurobindo has described this as the goal. He says, what will be the end of it all? It'll be like a honeycomb with many, many drops of honey. And each of those drops of honey feels itself and feels all the other drops of honey, and it feels the honeycomb as one, as a whole. And all the drops feel like that. And the honeycomb, the one, experiences the sweetness and the delight of every one of the drops within itself. It's an image. And Mother says that sweetness of the honey, that is the symbol of Ananda, of bliss. So that's the fulfillment, the goal. Prasuna.
The great world depends heartbeats of one soul. To feel was a flame discovery of God. All mind was a single heart of many strings. All life a song of many meeting lines. For worlds were many, but the self was one.
Yes. It's one of the great climaxes of the poem. All these great world rhythms, the cosmic stir, the expansion and the contraction and the movement, all these are experienced as heartbeats, the throbbing heartbeats of one soul. To feel the experience of the senses was a flame discovery of God. Everything that the senses experience is an intense perception of the divine. All mind was a single harp of many strings. A harp is a beautiful musical instrument. In the Christian tradition, they say the harp is what the angels play in heaven. Perhaps this may be the reason why. There's one harp, but it has so many strings. So there's one mind, one soul, one mind, one life. But that harp has many strings. It expresses and plays so many, many different notes in the manifestation. All life was a song of many meeting lives. So like a great choir, no? All the lives are notes in that great song of life. For worlds were many, but the self was one. All these many, many worlds with their many, many beings and experiences, they are all united because they are all within the one self. Joel.
This knowledge now was made a cosmos seed. This seed was cased in the safety of the light. It needed not a sheet of ignorance.
So through this experience, Asvapati has some knowledge. He knows now about the oneness and the manyness and the relationship between them. And Aurobindo tells us this knowledge now became the seed of a new universe, the seed of a cosmos. And this seed is encased in the protection, the safety of full consciousness of the light. It doesn't need any covering of ignorance. Our cosmos, the cosmos that we know and that we've been born into, seems to have been born or being born from a seed of inconscience, and we're protected by ignorance. But that's not the case with this new seed which he is seeing. Mahalingam. You can't read? Yuli, please.
Then, from the trance of that tremendous classic, and from the throbbings of that single heart, and from the naked spirit's victory, a new and marvelous creation rose.
Yes. The trance of that tremendous clasp, that embrace, the one embracing everything, all possibilities. And from that heartbeat to the throbbings of that single heart of love and bliss. And this victory, conquest of the unveiled spirit, a new and marvelous creation rose. Asvapati is privileged to see the birth of a new creation. That's the title of the book, the canto. The House of the Spirit, we've learned about that. Here, the new creation. And most of the rest of the canto is devoted to the description of the characteristics of the new creation. Would you like to read?
Incalculable outflowing infinitudes, laughing out an unmeasured happiness, lift their innumerable unity. Worlds where the being is unbound and wide, bodied unthinkably the egoless self. Rapture of beatific energies, joined time to the timelessness, pulse of a single joy, wide vasts were seen, where all is wrapped in all.
Thank you. Infinitudes. I think this is one of the words that Aurobindo has coined. Infinitenesses, in many infinities. There are so many, it's incalculable, and they're flowing out, and they are flowing out laughing out an unmeasured happiness, happiness that can't be measured. All these infinitudes live their unity, their innumerable unity. There are so many of them, there's no way of counting them. They are innumerable, but they are one, they are joined. There are many worlds, worlds where the being is unbound and wide, bodied unthinkably the egoless self. So there are worlds like that where there isn't this limitation of the ego, and we can't think them, and we can't think what those bodies might be like, those bodies where there's no limitation and there's no separation from other bodies. No? But these are somehow giving bodies to the self without ego, beyond ego. And there is a state of ecstasy, of rapture, an intense delight, of beatific energies. Beatific means blissful energies. Connect time to the timeless. There can be a manifestation with time and space and individuality which is still connected to the timeless. And then time and timelessness are poles, like the positive and negative poles of a magnet. Poles of a single joy. They're inseparable. There's a movement, there's a relationship between these two poles, but they are inseparable. And he sees, he perceives these white, pure spiritual vastnesses where all is wrapped in all. Everything is contained in everything else.
Innumerable unity.
Yeah.
Difficult to conceive.
Yes, yes. A oneness which contains within itself all this multiplicity. We have to conceive that. That's the goal. Somehow we have to have at least some kind of imagination or intuition of that. Francesca?
There were no contraries, no sundered parts. All by spiritual links were joined to all and bound indissolubly to the one. Each was unique, but took all lives as his own, and following out these tones of the infinite, recognized in himself the universe.
Thank you. So because these worlds are united by egoless self, there are no contraries, there are no oppositions. All the oppositions are united and harmonized. There are no sundered parts, there are no parts that are cut off from the whole or separated from each other. All by spiritual links were joined to all. So everything is connected to everything else. Everything is bound, connected, tied indissolubly. That tie can't be broken or dissolved. They are all bound, connected to the one. Each of these beings was unique, but all of them identify with all the others. They see that all these other lives, also unique, are aspects or lives of themselves. And if they follow out these tones, these unique notes of the infinite, they can recognize in the whole universe their own self.
The splendid center of infinity's world, pushed to its zenith side, its last expanse, felt the divinity of its own self-bliss repeated in its numberless other selves.
Let's pause there. Yeah. So each unique center is a splendid center of infinity. If something is boundless and limitless, it's difficult to say where its center is. But each of those beings is a center of this movement, this whirl of infinity. And if that center is pushed to its highest point, the zenith is the highest point of the sky above us, no? If it's pushed to that highest point, and if it's extended to its last expanse, it feels the divinity of its own self-bliss repeated in all its other selves, all the other beings in the universe. Yes?
It took up tirelessly into its scope persons and figures of the impersonal, as if prolonging in a ceaseless count, in a rapturous multiplication's sum, the recurring decimals of eternity.
Thank you. So this is each of these centers, no? These unique centers can recognize itself in all its other selves. So it can go on without getting tired. It can take into its scope, into its range of awareness or identification, these individualized persons and figures of a vast impersonality. And he gives this image. He says that's like going on and on and on in an unending count, the recurring decimals of eternity. In mathematics, there are numbers like that, no? That they go on repeating, recurring, and we can identify the sequence and we put a dot over it, and we know that that sequence will be repeated to infinity. And he says, to know that, that this is a rapturous multiplication sum, to know that there's no end to the series of these relationships and these experiences. It's full of delight, this, this multiplication. Rosa.
None was apart, none lived for himself alone. Each lived for God in him and God in all. Each holiness inexpressibly held the whole.
Yes. So there are all these centers, but none of them is separate, and none is living for itself alone. Each is living for the one, for God in him and God in all. Each soulness, each uniqueness, somehow inexpressibly, in a way that we can't put into words or into thoughts, contains the whole. So that's a very good place for us to pause today. So I think we have time to read these marvelous lines together.
There, nature on her dumb spiritual couch, immutably transcendent, knows her source, and to the stir of multitudinous worlds assents unmoved in a perpetual calm. All causing, all sustaining and aloof, the witness looks from his unshaken poise, an eye immense regarding all things done. Apart, at peace above creation's stir, immersed in the eternal altitudes, he abode defended in his shoreless self, companioned only by the all-seeing One. A mind too mighty to be bound by thought, a life too boundless for the play in space, a soul without borders, unconvinced of time. He felt the extinction of the world's long pain. He became the unborn self that never dies. He joined the sessions of infinity. On the cosmic murmur, primal loneliness fell. Annulled was the contact formed with time-born things. Empty grew nature's wide community. All things were brought back to their formless seed. The world was silent for a cyclic hour. Although the afflicted nature he had left maintained beneath him her broad, numberless fields, her enormous act receding failed remote, as if a soulless dream at last had ceased. No voice came down from the high silences. None answered from her desolate solitudes. A stillness of cessation reigned. The wide immortal hush before the gods are born. A universal force awaited, mute, the veiled transcendence ultimate decree. Then suddenly there came a downward look, as if a sea exploring its own depths, a living oneness widened at its core and joined him to unnumbered multitudes. A bliss, a light, a power, a flame white love caught all into a soul immense embrace. Existence found its truth on oneness breast, and each became the self and space of all. The great world rhythms were heartbeats of one soul. To feel was a flame discovery of God. All mind was a single harp of many strings, all life a song of many meeting lives. For worlds were many, but the self was one. This knowledge now was made a cosmos seed. This seed was cased in the safety of the light. It needed not a sheath of ignorance. Then from the trance of that tremendous clasp, and from the throbbings of that single heart, and from the naked spirit's victory, a new and marvelous creation rose. Incalculable outflowing infinitudes, laughing out an unmeasured happiness, lived their innumerable unity. Worlds where the being is unbound and wide, bodied unthinkably the egoless self. Rapture of beatific energies joined time to the timeless, poles of a single joy. Wide vasts were seen where all is wrapped in all. There were no contraries, no sundered paths. All by spiritual links were joined to all and bound indissolubly to the one. Each was unique, but took all lives as his own, and following out these tones of the infinite, recognized in himself the universe. A splendid center of infinity's whirl, pushed to its zenith's height, its last expanse, felt the divinity of its own self-bliss, repeated in its numberless other selves. It took up tirelessly into its scope persons and figures of the impersonal, as if prolonging in a ceaseless count, in a rapturous multiplication sum, the recurring decimals of eternity. None was apart, none lived for himself alone. Each lived for God in him and God in all. Each soulness inexpressibly held the whole.